Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to Neil for that lovely introduction. Uh, yes, as you mentioned, my first innings, I was a fighter pilot in the Navy, and I used to wear the slogan, uh, passion to flirt with death, very proudly. There was a patch on my flying overall. And I guess flying supersonic jets from the aircraft carrier at Mark II wasn't enough, and the passion for space finally ended up co-founding Inbound Aerospace with two lovely people, Dr. Arvind and Vishal. And today we are very excited to share our story and vision with this lovely audience.
Hi everyone, I'm Vishal. I'm one of the three co-founders of Inbound Aerospace. Always been passionate about space, and then when our third co-founder Arvind reached out to me with this opportunity to build something, and when he told me about what he was working on at Inbound Aerospace, I was very, very interested, and I couldn't pass on this opportunity, and here I am standing with all of you here on the stage 2 years later. Over to you, Abhijit.
Well, more than a century ago, the Wright brothers turned wind into lift. The Cold War, that's few decades ago, turned that lift into orbit. And today, we are turning that orbit into opportunity. Launching to space is a solved problem. That's what we feel right now. And this main change has happened because in the past few decades, the launch costs have reduced drastically. They've fallen by over 90% in the last 2 decades. And entities like NASA, European Space Agency, Japanese Exploration Agency, ISRO, SpaceX, and our very own Agnikul have solved this problem for us. Let's have a look at these figures. 25 years ago, there were just about 500 satellites in orbit. Today, that figure is about 15,000. And in the next 20 years or so, it's estimated to cross 100,000 with at least 7 to 8 space stations. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are witnessing here is an unprecedented new space economy, which we've never known before as that blue. So agreed that we've solved the launch problem, but then at the same time, we are confronted with a bigger question. What next? What do we do after getting up there? How do we tap into this massive potential of this promising space? And are we ready enough to really support this growing orbital economy? And that's where Inbound Aerospace comes in. What we are building at Team Inbound is something simple to describe, but really transformative. Think factories, laboratories, and orbital delivery systems from space for Earth. Our product, a fully autonomous, recoverable, and most importantly, reusable spacecraft. That's phase 1 for us. And in phase 2, of course, it's human travel. I'm sure some of Hollywood fans sitting in the audience would have been pretty much excited about the much hyped first marriage in space of our dear Tom Cruise. Sadly, that got called off. Nevertheless, it's a great tip for the adventurous ones. And space doesn't discriminate if it's your first marriage, second marriage, or third marriage. It's welcome for everyone. But coming back to the point, what a space plane or a spacecraft has, it's not only limited by the wide commercial applications which are there, but at the same time, the dual use case for strategic users, progressive militaries is formidable. And at Inbound, we think space is not a destination, but a means to an end. So let's talk of the possibilities, the whys and hows. Over to Vishal.
Thank you, Abhijit. In space, the possibilities are limitless, right? Nowadays, we can talk about all of the potential opportunities that can happen in space. We can talk about building data centers in orbit, taking advantage of the unlimited solar potential. We are talking about fighting wars in space by building and launching spy satellites and even defense outposts. And then we can also even talk about mining celestial bodies for very important high-value resources as well. But all of this is a little bit in the future. Let's talk about what can happen today and what is happening today, where what we're going to talk about is work whose potential has already been proven on the International Space Station and is no longer science fiction. So what can we talk about? We can talk about accelerating drug discovery, where pharma companies can save billions of dollars in their R&D timelines. We can also talk about 3D printing of organs in weightlessness, where patients don't have to wait years for the transplant of their organs. We can also talk about purer semiconductor crystals, which are grown in space and then brought back to make advanced semiconductor chips. We can also talk about more purer optical fibers, which are made in space and then brought back to transmit signals over longer distances without any losses. But I've just scratched the surface here. There is still a lot more products that can be made in space and brought back. We have not really explored as a humanity, we have not really explored the full potential of this unique zero gravity environment, which makes all of this possible. So on Earth, gravity is both a gift and a limitation. It keeps us on the ground, it prevents things from floating around, right? But it's also a limiting factor for many important physical and chemical processes which tend to happen here on Earth. So I would say that on Earth, gravity is a ceiling, but in space, zero gravity is a canvas. So in zero gravity, a lot of these physical forces which act on Earth vanish, so that enables a lot of these processes to happen. So particles don't settle down, bubbles don't float, cells crystallize in unique, unfamiliar ways. Because of that, we're able to see all of these products that you see here on the screen. But very importantly, a common question that we get asked is, can you try to recreate this zero gravity environment back here on Earth? The answer is you can, but only for a few seconds. Anything beyond a few seconds, you have no choice but to go all the way to space. So that's where we're here. That's why we're here today. But importantly, the International Space Station, where all of this has happened so far, is scheduled to be retired soon. But we don't see that as an ending. It's only the beginning, an opportunity to create the impossible 400 kilometers above our head. And that's where we come in. So at Inbound, our spacecraft is able to enable this on-demand access to this long duration, zero gravity environment. But more importantly, we're also a cargo player to deliver critical supplies anywhere around the world within an hour. And apart from that, we can also be a cargo player to and from future commercial and private space stations as well, both government and private space stations. So that's where we're looking to kind of position ourselves today. So how does all of this happen? This is what our typical mission profile would look like. At Inbound Aerospace, Abhijit would have mentioned, we're not solving the problem of going to space. We're solving the problem of coming back from space. So our mission starts when the launch vehicle which takes us to space turns off its engines. So how does it happen? Our spacecraft is able to go to space on any available launch vehicle up to the low Earth orbit. Once there, it's able to stay there for about 60 days, whether it's a lab, whether it's able to act as a lab, as a hardware test bed, or even a factory. So multiple possible use cases for us, and even a cargo supplier as well. So after the mission has been completed, our spacecraft is able to fire its onboard engines, reduce its altitude, and come back into the Earth's atmosphere. And when it comes back into the Earth's atmosphere, it's fighting temperatures in excess of 1,500 degrees Celsius, and it's traveling at 25,000 kilometers per hour. So after this big adventure, our spacecraft comes back and lands on a runway. So that's where we're at today. I'll hand it over back to Abhijit. Yeah.
I think that was a lot too technical, Vishal. Let's talk business for most of the people over here. So let me explain one particular use case and the business model around it, right? On the left of the screen, you have the industry partner. Now, he could either be a pharmaceutical company or an advanced manufacturing company, or for that matter, a university, who wants to experiment or research in the environs of microgravity. In the center block are the payload implementation partners. Now, these are experts who know how to design and customize the payload which needs to go to space. And you'll all appreciate that every payload has to be designed in a particular manner because of its unique objective. And on the right, we come in as Inbound, wherein our mission is to choreograph the launch, the experimentation, the return back of the spacecraft, and the safe landing of it at the airfield of your choice, bringing back every particular gram or specific gram which was produced in space back to Earth safely, profitably, and intact. Ladies and gentlemen, history reminds us that the first few factories were built up along rivers, the first cities grew along trade routes, and the next industries are about to be born in orbit. For aviation, that moment was the jet age. For computing, it was microprocessors. For space, that moment is now. I would like to paraphrase a well-known proverb over here and give it an evolutionary flavor. Time, tide, and now space, wait for none. Also, I would like to leave and request this audience over here that we invite strategic partners, visionary investors like you all, and pioneering researchers to join us, not for a race, but for a relay, a torch which we're going to pass on generation to generation, wherein we elevate humanity. Because the future isn't about escaping the Earth, it's about elevating the Earth through space. And before we leave you, we want to leave you with a small thought, a simple thought experiment. Imagine all of you are sitting in a cafe, not on terra firma, but in space, and on your menu you have 3 dishes, right? One is lab-grown solitaire for the ladies, flawless and lossless optical fibers for the tech people, as well as age-defying drugs for everyone. What would you choose? At Inbound, we are here to serve them all. You have to make the choice. Thanks for being a lovely audience.